Welcome to week 4. We're looking at the individual factors that influence ethical decision making. In week 3, we looked at our ethical decision making model, and one component of that was the individual. So to better explain how individual values and character fit into ethical decision making, Linda and I have developed a concept we call, believe it or not, three-legged stool. Linda, can you discuss that three-legged stool?
Yeah, it basically starts with the individual, and it says if you don't help the individual to become ethical and high integrity, they're going to be vulnerable. But as they move into an organization and they have the opportunity to interact and influence others, you want to make sure they understand how to lead ethically. So how do you hire for, motivate, manage, and evaluate individuals so that they contribute to an ethical organizational culture? And then the third leg is, do you have the policies, programs, and structure to, even as people move up and transition in and out of the organization, to help support an ethical organizational culture? And that would mean codes which identify risk areas, programs of training, reporting mechanisms, usually anonymous and sometimes external, due diligence and background checks in hiring and promoting, so you don't put somebody in a position to influence who has a propensity to bend or break the rules, and other elements of what we know accurately influences what individuals do within the organization.
So if I can summarize this idea of, it's maybe a good way to explain it to students, is the importance of character and the individual, and some people think that's all ethics is about. If you have good character, you can make good ethical decisions. One expression I don't like is, I've heard people say, ethics is what you do when no one's watching. And that kind of gives the impression that ethical decisions in an organization are in a silo and the individual has total control over it. But of course we know from our model that there's a lot of social interaction and pressures that you're just not in a room by yourself making ethical decisions. You're working with others. But if you don't have character, and if you don't have good values, and you're willing to bend the rules, obviously that leg of the stool's gone, and you're not going to be successful.
You're likely to teeter or fall.
Yeah.
So if any one of those legs is missing, the individual, the ability to engage in ethical leadership and ethical camaraderie, or the lack of understanding of those institutional elements that must be there in the result of promotions and transitions in and out of the organization, then you're going to fall.
So this week we're looking at the individual factors, and in chapter 6 we provide what is I consider a pretty I'm sorry, I'm to start over
Okay.
on that component.
Yeah, on the week 6.
Okay. In week 6, we look at the individual, and we look at some of the things that might determine individual character and values and ethical decision making. And the way that's often done in business ethics courses is to explore concepts of moral philosophy. And some business ethics courses are built totally around moral philosophy. But back to our three-legged stool, if you don't look at the elements and the structure within the organization and the ability of managers to lead others and be responsible for others' behavior, then you're really missing the boat. But we feel that since this area is so important, we're devoting as much space as we can to it.
And if you think about it, AACSB International's new accreditation guidelines for business ethics education say they don't want to see business ethics courses taught by philosophers. They want to see ethics officers more engaged with colleges of business. They want to see colleges of business operating like businesses with codes and hotlines and branding and a culture of ethics and integrity. So even what our accrediting body is now saying is that universities and colleges of business should look more like businesses and interact more with businesses in the ethics area.
We cover the philosophical elements of ethical decision making because it helps to develop good critical thinking skills. But it's not a substitute for knowing about how to lead others. It's not a substitute for having an ethics initiative in an organization that you have to have some compliance requirements to make sure that rogue employees or those who are willing to take excessive risk have certain policies and codes that they have to abide by. It all fits together. But I think you'll find the things that we discuss in Chapter 6 fairly standard when people take a moral philosophy approach to teaching the course, but students should always recognize that understanding moral philosophy doesn't tell you how to resolve a complex ethical decision. It requires subject matter knowledge, experience in the industry. It requires collaboration and open discussion. The last part of Chapter 6 discusses white-collar crime, and we put it into Chapter 6 because there are bad people out there that are poorly wired, that will do anything. Back to the three-legged stool, they're so bad, it doesn't matter if you have leadership or structure, they're going to make mistakes. And it's been estimated that about 1% of top managers in organizations are psychopaths. And if you end up with a psychopath, obviously bad things will happen.
And the other thing to think about 10% of any group will engage in unethical or illegal conduct if they perceive the opportunity exists to do so and that they won't get caught. So think about that as well when you talk about and help students in terms of building individual character.
This week we are using the NCAA case, and I think it will really resonate with students because very often in your classroom you'll end up with an athlete who has gone through NCAA training. There are principals that are in the case.
And also I think you can talk with students about quite often ethics and compliance programs come into universities through the NCAA door. So the athletic programs get training and hotlines and all kinds of support. And students who are athletes can very much relate to that and can use it as a good example of how you manage risks. If you want to think of it outside the framework of the NCAA kind of realm, think about professional sports and what some of the ethical issues and legal issues that are being faced in professional football, basketball, and other sports as well. And I think this opens the door for discussions about those risk areas and how they're being dealt with as well.
And we're looking forward to your comments this week about the NCAA case and how you might use it and how does it fit into the business ethics area, because many of these universities, universities such as University of Texas, Ohio State, Texas A&M, the programs there, some of them are over $500 million programs in terms of the revenue that's brought into the schools. So you have a real revenue stream there where some schools have been a little lax in providing oversight on student athletes. So
yeah, it's big business. There's a lot at stake. So you can see where some of the digressions are occurring, or at least why some of the digressions are occurring.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing you in week 5.